Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon over in Europe or wherever you are looking at us from, and welcome. My name is Julia Joja. I'm a senior fellow at MEI's Frontier Europe Initiative, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all today to the event on Black Sea connectivity and connectivity in the South Caucasus. MEI's Frontier Europe Initiative explores the Black Sea as a key region for transatlantic security. And with this event today, it is a part of our effort for Black Sea security and dialogue. And we will look at regional interconnectivity projects and discuss some of the most relevant political, economic, and security issues of interconnectivity in the extended Black Sea region, including the South Caucasus. And we are thrilled to be joined today by Igor Konstantinov, Dr. Mamuka Tsereteli, and Andriy Tsokol, who will lend their perspectives on Black Sea and South Caucasus interconnectivity. I would like to introduce you first to Ivo Konstantinov, head of the economic section and trade attaché to the Bulgarian embassy to the United States here in DC. He focuses on trade facilitation, investment promotion, IT cooperation enhancement, agricultural development, R&D, outsourcing and exchange, technology transfers, tourism promotion, travel and transportation. So he has a vast portfolio of professional expertise in the region. He has vast professional experience as well in the field in Black Sea and Central European interconnectivity projects, also in the private sphere, in the business sphere. And he was instrumental in the establishment of some of the first private railway freight carriers and container terminals in Central and Eastern Europe. And he has also authored multiple studies and articles in this domain. Welcome, Ivo. It is also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mamuka Tsereteli, who is a non-resident scholar with Frontier Europe Initiative, so my colleague here, and a senior fellow at the Central Asia Caucasus Institute at American Foreign Policy Council, based in Washington, DC. He has more than 30 years experience in academia, diplomacy, and business development. And Mamuka's expertise includes economic and energy security in Europe and Eurasia, political and economic risk analysis and mitigation strategies, and business development in the Black Sea Caspian region. And finally, last but not least, I am thrilled to welcome Andriy Tsokol, Associate Director at the Infrastructure Europe Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Andriy covers the EBRD's operations in the transport sector of Ukraine. He's responsible for origination and execution of new transactions and manages a portfolio of over 1 billion euros, including projects in road, rail, port, logistics, and other sectors. And Andriy holds a BA in International Economics from Kiev National Taras Shevchenko University and an MA in Economics from the Central European University and Duke University. To read their full bios, please visit MEI's website. I look forward to taking audience questions through our Zoom's Q&A feature, which you can all see on your screens. For those calling in by phone or watching our panel on the live stream, you can ask a question or send feedback by emailing events@mei.edu or tweeting us at MEI Frontier. If you have any technical questions, again, please email events@mei.edu. Feel free, please, to ask questions anytime throughout the panel. I'll be looking at all of your questions and will factor in as many as possible throughout this discussion. And with that, let's begin. The Black Sea has historically served as a major trading route connecting Eastern Europe, the South Caucasus, and Central Asia to the Mediterranean and to Western Europe. Over the last years, we have witnessed growing interest in the region from major regional and external actors, of course, Turkey and Russia, also the United States, and increasingly China. These interests are not just of security, but also commercial in nature. For the extended Black Sea region, so including the South Caucasus, to develop renewed effort is needed to facilitate Black Sea connectivity in order to manage post-COVID recovery and achieve significant synergy of resources and markets for the years to come. Specifically, the region needs more investment in infrastructure development and the harmonization of tariffs and border crossing procedures. These efforts of regional investments of infrastructure and harmonization should be focused on increasing competitiveness of the entire transit and transportation system in the extended region. To off today's discussion, I'd like to turn first to Dr. Tsereteli Mamuka to provide us with a brief overview of interconnectivity in the region that we're talking about. He recently issued a report for Frontier Europe focusing on some of these issues. I would encourage you, if you haven't read the report, have a look at it. You can find it on our website. So Mamuka, over to you. Can you offer us a brief overview of your main findings regarding the current state of interconnectivity in the extended Black Sea region?
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everybody. I think it's an important subject that we are discussing today. As you mentioned, Julia, from the beginning, there is lots of attention on the security dimension and developments in the Black Sea area. In the last probably little over 10 years, some tectonic shifts took place in the region with on the security side, with Russian invasion in Georgia, annexation of and occupation of territories in Georgia, including in the regions on the Black Sea area, Abkhazia, Crimea's annexation by Russia, and the gradual growth of attention from Western security institutions like NATO and others, as well as individual countries looking more on the security side. And most of the discussion on Black Sea in recent years is about how many missiles are there, how many ships are going in and out of the Black Sea through Bosphorus, what are the presence of troops and so forth, or equipment and so forth. So we thought the importance of Black Sea as a trade, by the way, historic trade route, connecting different parts of the world in the very important, strategically important area, is somehow underestimated and undervalued. And we have to just stress from the beginning that Black Sea plays a very important role for economic viability of all the littoral states, including obviously some smaller state where it plays more role, like whether it's Georgia or Ukraine or Romania or Bulgaria, but also for Turkey and Russia as well. I think it's essential to mention that one of the most important Russian trade ports is Novorossiysk and surrounding areas, and the majority of Russian export of many different products, starting from energy, ending with grains and agricultural products, goes through Novorossiysk port. So this is very essential. Again, as I said, waterway, Black Sea as a trade and transit route for all the littoral states. But not only, we see growing interest coming from faraway places like China, but also European Union, which has several member states actually as a littoral states. It explains interest and inclusion of Black Sea in the Three Seas Initiative of the European Union. You all know that this is an initiative of the European Union, which includes 12 countries, but all the member countries are included so far. And this is an initiative to deal with the post-Soviet legacy, post-Soviet infrastructure legacy. We all know that it's a legacy of Cold War, when all the infrastructure in Central Eastern European countries are most connected to Russia, and whether it's energy or power lines and so forth. But there is a need definitely to realignment of infrastructure, and that's what this initiative is about, to link Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Sea countries into one transportation, digital and energy sort of system, interconnected system. But one of the arguments of my paper is that, of my report is that the strengths of 3C initiative and in general importance of Black Sea connectivity will only gain if it's extended to, in the first stage, to think about at least all countries of association agreements with the European Union, like Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, but also essential parties to be connected to Caspian region as well, because of value that Caspian region, both on energy but also non-energy side, brings to economic development for and the trade and connectivity to Black Sea area and countries around the region. I mentioned energy. I think we should probably focus a little bit on that. Sometimes people probably don't realize that more than 3 million barrels of oil are passing through Black Sea on a daily basis, mostly exported from the overseas, whether it's Russian oil, majority of it, but also oil from Kazakhstan coming from Caspian pipeline, from Tengiz field and through the special terminal. Hundreds of ships actually are taking this oil to Mediterranean and other markets in Europe and elsewhere. So from energy perspective, oil export is very essential for Black Sea, but also natural gas. As you all probably know, Russia is connected with Turkey with the two undersea pipelines, Blue Stream and Turk Stream. And starting from this year, actually, not only Turkey is supplied by Russia with these pipelines, but also countries beyond the Black Sea, like Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, are getting now gas. So it's an underestimated fact how important Black Sea is from economic perspective for Russia, but also obviously for other countries. But I'm emphasizing for Russia because this gives some understanding of essential importance of this sea and this connectivity for Russia itself. And also it gives certain kind of leverage on everybody else, because Russia is interested in stability of functioning of this waterway. So that's a factor that we need to take into consideration. And of course, talking about energy, we cannot skip the fact that pipelines are an infrastructure that is not crossing Black Sea, but is coming from Caspian Sea, goes to Mediterranean and beyond, is also very essential, but it also serves in the overall energy security of the Black Sea countries and beyond. Part of this oil and gas is going through some littoral states like obviously Georgia and Turkey. Oil and gas coming from Azerbaijan stays in region as well, not just leaving the region. But the most recent project, large infrastructure project that brings natural gas from Azerbaijan Caspian field of Shah Deniz all the way to Italy was commissioned on 31st of December, and it's a project of tremendous importance. So we see that energy-wise, this is important region as well for supply and diversify energy supplies to European and Mediterranean markets. I think it's essential also, there is a growing trend of transshipment of oil and oil products from Caspian to other littoral states like Ukraine. Oil goes and oil products goes from Azerbaijan to Georgia, and then Ukraine, and 2020 saw some increase of supply of oil from Azerbaijan oil products to Ukraine as well. And not last but not least, a very important issue that when we talk about this region, people always think about, I mean, general perception is it's all about energy, but not. There is a lot of other cargoes that goes through this region. When we talk about South Caucasus and bridge between Caspian and Black Sea. And I think we have to focus more on about how can we diversify kind of cargo mix? How can we make sure that this region becomes more attractive for general cargoes, whether it's containers, bulk, or others, in order to make it more essential, more important, not from economic point of view, but also think about that energy pipelines are serving in a sense as in a role of deterrent, security deterrent. Whenever pipelines go, people are careful going there. whenever there is some kind of conflict and so forth, because a lot of interests are involved in that, global interests involved. And we looking at the Caspian Black Sea connectivity on general cargoes, containers, and other cargoes, we need to think about how much not only economic but also security benefit it can bring if lots of players are involved and have interest in this trade. I think one fact I would like to mention is that there's a growing land shipments of different kind of cargoes, mostly containers, from China all the way to Europe. And last year saw surge in these shipments, and to the degree that rail shipment became expensive. Usually, most of the trade between Europe and Asia, which is, by the way, more than 500 billion euros, is taking place via sea lines, a maritime connection. But there is a growing rail connection between China and Europe that goes mostly through Russia, whether it's Far East or Western China going through Kazakhstan and into Russia and beyond to Europe through Ukraine, Belarus, and so forth. But because of the increased cost of that, there is a chance for South Caucasus corridor to attract some of these cargoes through again Caspian connection to South Caucasus and Black Sea and to Romania, Ukraine, and beyond, and Bulgaria, and so forth. So I think, but this requires significant development of not only hard infrastructure, but also soft infrastructure, harmonization of tariffs, border crossings, governance issues, and so forth. I think it's very essential that countries themselves are involved very intimately in this process of understanding what needs to be done in order to make sure that at least part of this cargo goes through this region. By the way, it has to be mentioned that there are significant public investments in the ports of, let's say, Caspian Sea, Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan, Aktau and Kurik in Kazakhstan, state-of-the-art new port in Baku, and also some private investments in Georgian ports are taking place. So I think it's not enough. What we will need to see is that not all this infrastructure is fully utilized right now. Similarly, like in other side of the western side of Black Sea as well. But in order to make all this infrastructure work, it's essential, as I said, I'm repeating myself, but I think it's an important point that countries work together, harmonizing their soft infrastructure and the procedures that allow this transshipments through this corridor. To summarize, I think there is a great opportunity to increase trade and transit through Black Sea for cargoes coming from Asia, whether it's China or Western China or some Indian subcontinent or Afghanistan, or obviously Central Asia proper, but also shipping ready-made goods from Europe to this region, and look at this region as a market with tremendous opportunities with 300 million people and growing purchasing power. So our objective is to see this larger picture and make sure that countries and governments, as well as international organizations supporting them, work together to maximize opportunities. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mamuka, for this brilliant overview of the connections between the South Caucasus and Black Sea defense. I already have a follow-up question specifically on transit corridors and the changing thereof, or possibilities of changing thereof, is in the South Caucasus, and how can they affect European energy. But I'll follow up with that a little bit later on, and we already have a question from you from participants that I'll be weighing in a bit later. Let me turn to Ivo next, and then Andriy. Both of them have prepared some fantastic slides for us to help us visualize some of the connections, interconnections, and the issues around them in the region that we're talking about. Ivo, you were so kind to take the floor and talk us briefly through interconnectivity in the Black Sea, extended Black Sea region, and your views on that, please.
It's good to meet everyone, and thank you to the organizers for giving me this opportunity today. As Yulia already stated, the Eurasian landmass is home to the oldest trade relationship in history. If you think about it, it motivated empires to raise, expand, and grow, spurred the area of great exploration. The China-Europe trade, which transits the South Caucasus and Central Asia, has been decisive for most of the European developments in human civilization. And it continues to be key today to world peace and stability. And we, the Black Sea countries, European Union members and non-members alike, view ourselves not as periphery, as very often mainstream media and commentators call us, but we view ourselves as the heart of contemporary geopolitical developments. As a matter of fact, the biggest theoretical thinkers of geopolitics consider Central Asia and the Black Sea as pivotal to world peace and stability. The European Union in particular recognizes the strategic importance of Central Asia and the South Caucasus as a link to the huge Asian continent with Europe. In 2019, the European Union updated its Central Asian strategy with a focus on resilience, prosperity, and very strong emphasis on connectivity and regional cooperation. And when we speak of connectivity, we think of transportation. When we speak of transportation, we think of maritime transportation, as we're talking about the Black Sea in the heart of it. And when we think about maritime transportation, we think that it's cream of the crop is container traffic. This is a very brief visual. I'm going to just run through about the container traffic and which ports in the Black Sea dominate it. It's no surprise there that the traffic is distributed between three ports. The challenges, however, are mostly continue to be undermined by strengthened by the fact that the Black Sea is unfortunately the bottom of the food chain pyramid in container maritime traffic due to the lack of investment in drafts and port infrastructure. Very few direct lines of the rotations of the container shipping companies call the Black Sea, with very few exceptions, CMA CGM being the leader. But most of the traffic from the Far East to the Black Sea, and let alone North American traffic to the Black Sea, unfortunately comes through two transshipments. And especially in our relationships to the United States, this will continue to be a challenge because we sometimes face up to 50 days of transit time to reach especially the American Midwest, which happens to be our biggest market in this country. And there is much to do, and we welcome American involvement and investment in the improvement of this connectivity, both through infrastructure investment, port operations. And here I may just add that the temporary, hopefully temporary termination of the Anaklia project in Georgia is an unfortunate event, and we would welcome this development. Bulgaria is dredging one of its key ports, Varna, and investing in the connectivity of its harbors, mostly across the Black Sea, with an eye to the Southern Caucasus and Central Asia. The Bulgarian role in the European Union Black Sea connectivity is very interesting here, because obviously the bulk of the business, the container traffic, is controlled by the Romanian port of Constanța, with 1.2 million average containers throughput a year, mostly transshipment. But where Bulgaria specializes, however, is in a very interesting area, which is a technology very few countries in the world still practice, and it's called the rail ferries. It's most simply ferry boats for railways, which makes Bulgaria one of the very few places which makes the two rail gauges, the Central Asian gauge, which is broader, and the European gauge compatible. Operating the railway ferries between Bulgaria and Georgia is a fantastic prerequisite that is underestimated to increasing connectivity, not just of the Far East Black Sea region traffic, but tapping into the enormous growth of Central Asia and China to Europe traffic by providing an alternative route to the traditional two routes that are being used right now, the Trans-Siberian Railway Russia route and the Turkey route. We are, with these rail ferries and with partnership with our Georgian and Azerbaijani partners, we are in the middle of an alternative third route for this. We have been sharing this capacity with DOD, for example, with their planned drawdown of the Afghan troops. There's an enormous amount of cargo that is generated from the drawdown, as we have experienced from one drawdown already. And the key here would be something that very few people have put forward in the mainstream media and is fairly unknown in the United States: the integration of Caspian connectivity with Black Sea connectivity through this rail ferry technology, which means that through a partnership between the European Union, Bulgaria, Romania, and the Southern Caucasus, we literally reach Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and China by integrating those two ferry routes. The problems right now are related to customs clearance and the schedules of the ferries, and we are encouraging our friends from Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea Shipping Company in their improving of capacity and ordering of new ferry ships. But there is still much to be done, and we welcome American participation in that. We need a lot of investment in road infrastructure and rail infrastructure, obviously, and this is where also the European Union priorities become part of this topic of Black Sea connectivity with the Southern Caucasus and Central Asia. This is the Trans-European Transport Network, which is very important for us to mention because it is the focus of investment resources allocation of the European Union in infrastructure, in short sea shipping, waterways, and road and rail infrastructure, which, as you can see on the map, eventually leads us to the Black Sea and the Southern Caucasus and Central Asia, especially on a very important corridor we formerly known as the 8th corridor, which comes from the Southern Caucasus and other Black Sea destinations onto the Bulgarian ports of Varna and Burgas, providing connectivity to the Adriatic by streamlined rail services. And the 8th corridor is a geopolitical priority for the transatlantic relations and in the European Union policy, and it has meant many obstacles and lack of investment in the past. Practically on the ground, on our European side of things, there is only one 25-kilometer, 15 miles stretch of rail connection missing between Bulgaria and the Republic of Northern Macedonia, which our Macedonian friends are in active discussion with our government in our relations with this country right now. But this is crucially important to connect Central Asia directly to the Mediterranean by streamlined rail. And pivoting to a very important topic of the Three Seas Initiative, which Bulgaria is the chair of, my country chairs this year, one of the three Bulgarian filed projects in the Three Seas Initiative with the new investment fund that is backed by the US State Department is a rehabilitation and improvement and capacity of a railway line between Varna and Russe, which will basically be very strategically important for this rail ferry traffic coming from Central Asia and the Southern Caucasus to the European Union, and if streamlined can provide immensely improved connectivity between those two regions, and is a factor of stability and diversification of the transportation routes that are dominated by non-EU and sometimes belligerent powers as well. And another topic for Bulgaria is not directly related, of course, to the Black Sea connectivity, but indirectly it is. And it's the improvement of north-south corridor capacity. And in the energy area, we are part of this Southern Caucasus European Union connectivity through the extension that Bulgaria and Greece are building to the Trans-Adriatic pipeline that provides a diversification of Caspian gas resources to the European Union. This is another resource for us in the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization that we wish to see improved and more energized work. Of course, there are many diverse countries with diverse geopolitical priorities in it, but it's still there, it's still a resource. And I would quote in closing one of our prime minister's informal statements that to us, the Black Sea security also means sailing yachts, tourism, and cruising. And it is it is definitely worth mentioning that establishment roughly 12 years ago of the Cruise Black Sea Association that involves all Black Sea cruising destinations to improve also the cruising industry that is an incredible potential to bring over peace, stability, prosperity, and regional cooperation in the area. And is quite underestimated. And even in this COVID crisis in the cruise industry, actually 6 cruise lines have already scheduled Black Sea cruises for this year, the 2021 season, which is very encouraging. And in closing, I'm only going to mention that the Black Sea connectivity and the rail ferries that we operate are a great opportunity for other businesses, not only the legumes and grain and cotton exports from Central Asia to Europe, but also LPG. LPG consumption is growing in Eastern Europe, and it's an interesting market, although the Black Sea doesn't have right now pipelines and natural gas direct connectivity from the Southern Caucasus through the Black Sea to the European Union. There are other options and businesses that could be developed. And I'm going to close with this statement that we invite American investment and participation in this tremendous potential in our region, because Black Sea connectivity is also a profitable value proposition. Thank you. Thank you for today and for having me.
Thank you, Ivo, for your fantastic presentation. My takeaway from that is that we are ready on the western side of the Black Sea to receive and connect more to the eastern side. And we focused a lot, thanks to Ivo's presentation on the southern dimension of that. Don't forget, there's also the port of Constanza, the biggest one in the Black Sea. That's another important connection to both sides. And with that segue, I'd like to move over to the Ukrainian side with Andriy. Ukraine remains one of the bigger countries with a lot of capacity for development in industry and critical infrastructure and more than that. Andriy, could you offer us some of your perspectives briefly on the developments of critical infrastructure in Ukraine from your perspective from the EBRD?
Thank you very much, Julia. Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with all of you. As Julia said in the beginning, I'm a development banker with EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and I cover transport sector in Ukraine. So today I would like to share my perspective on Ukraine's port sector developments. I think this is one of the most interesting and dynamic sectors in Ukrainian infrastructure. First of all, I would like to start by saying that Ukraine is rich in seaports. If you look at the map, you can see there are 18 of them. Of course, they are all different. There are large and small ones. But basically, one can say that this sector has gone through significant transformation in the last 10 to 20 years. So it started from a fully state-owned sector, which, well, had a lot of capacity, but also had a lot of a large need for upgrade, modernization, and now we are at least halfway through. So first of all, there is a significant private involvement in this sector now. If you look at the data, 60% of turnover is carried out by private port operators and only 40% by state-owned port operators. There is a new body created a few years ago, Ukraine Seaport Administration, which is responsible for the development of strategic infrastructure like channels, berths, import road and rail connections. And we can see an increased focus on this strategic infrastructure. There is a new strategy for port sector development until 2013 adopted. So that gives us hope that indeed the sector is getting the attention it needs and will get the investment it actually requires. Again, looking at the data, you can see that the main flows are associated with grains, metals and ores, containers, and they tend to concentrate in large ports of Yuzhny, Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Mykolaiv. So all of those are on the Black Sea. Looking at the trends, you can see a clear increase in agricultural exports. In fact, exports is what is driving the Ukrainian port sector dynamics. Most of the cargo is exports, but you also see the decline in transit cargoes. This is associated with the fact that historically most of transit used to come from Russia, but for clear political and economic reasons, this flow is going away. In fact, it's almost gone. Now there are only 10 million tons left out of 160 total port turnover in Ukraine. And this actually underscores the importance of looking for new routes, new traffic, developing new corridors. And the key challenges that the sector is facing is actually quite common for many countries in the region. It's infrastructure bottlenecks, not only the port capacity itself, but also hinterland connections, depth limitations, well, handling equipment as well, but maybe this is less of an issue. There are also certain issues dealing with sector management and regulation, but clear room for improvement in terms of customs procedures, control procedures. So if we want to develop the transit traffic, that is a clear priority. High port dues are also an impediment. They are one of the highest in the Black Sea region. And then, of course, the low level of containerization and intermodality. This is where investment priorities are clearly focused, and we hope that in the next 5 to 10 years there will be new projects to improve the current state of play. Here you can see the map of international transport corridors going through Ukraine. Well, Ukraine is, of course, fortunate with its geographical position at the very heart of Europe. And on this map, what I especially like about this map is that it shows the corridor, both the corridors that go through Ukraine and those that don't go through Ukraine. In particular, you can see the Belt and Road corridors originating from China. So the two main ones actually don't go through Ukraine. So the Trans-Siberian one goes through Belarus, and then the other route through Turkey. And this actually underscores the importance of developing the Black Sea, Caspian Sea corridor, and also the Baltic Sea, Black Sea corridor, because basically this is where the future lies, and where currently this potential for Ukraine remains untapped. So somehow the traffic flows, this transit that could go through Ukraine, for the time being, it doesn't go there. But there is a potential which we want to develop, and EBRD, as the largest foreign investor in the Ukrainian economy, is definitely interested to play a role in here. So here on this map, you can see some of our key infrastructure projects that we have completed or are working on at the moment. So EBRD, as I said, is indeed the largest foreign investor into Ukrainian economy, and for us, infrastructure is a key area of focus, because it is, of course, instrumental to the development of the country. I'm showing here not only the port projects, and of course the obvious reason for that is ports are gateways. They are connected to the rest of the transport system, and their efficiency is directly related to the quality of those connections. So here you can see the projects in the road sector, in rail, and then in the port sector, and they are all nicely connected, because the road corridors we have financed, they tend to focus on connectivity with the EU, the MO6 Kiev-Chop road, and also the connectivity between Kiev and Odessa, and the seaports, the MO5 Kiev-Odessa road. The rail connection, UZ electrification project, a project signed a few years ago and currently under implementation, is focused again on the connectivity between the main industrial region of Ukraine in the center, Kryvyi Rog, and the seaports. This is the export traffic, the iron ore and industrial products. And then the ports themselves, Brooklyn, Kiev, MV Cargo are private projects we have financed. So maybe we can look at some of the projects that we think are illustrative. So one of them is MV Cargo, or Neptune Grain Terminal. This is the largest grain terminal on the Black Sea, completed in 2019, financed by EBRD and IFC. The project is developed by a partnership of the local port operator, actually the largest private port group in Ukraine, and Cargill, a well-known US-based international commodities trader. So this is a 5 million ton capacity grain terminal, which was launched and is operational, which is helping Ukraine realize its potential as a large grain exporter. Another interesting project is Olvia and Kherson port concessions. So this illustrates another line of activity that we are pursuing. So the privatization, the bigger involvement, the greater involvement of private capital into formerly state-owned assets. So the ports of Olvia and Kherson used to be owned by the state, but EBRD and IFC worked with the ministry to prepare the concession. So this was the first ever port concession, or actually concession project in general in Ukraine. It was successfully closed last year. commercial closing. It actually attracted interest from foreign investors, and in case of Olvia, the concession was awarded to Q Terminals, an investor from Qatar. This was the first ever investment from Qatar in the Ukrainian economy, and again, it is having a big impact on the future map of the trade flows, because Ukraine as a large grain exporter, of course, has common business to do with Qatar, which is a net grain importer. So we can see this investment going into Ukrainian assets, into Ukrainian infrastructure, into grain production assets from the Gulf, and the ports have a large role in there in helping secure the food supplies to that region. Then I will quickly mention our road projects, because we have been involved in this sector for a long time, since 2000, and we implemented 5 projects, 5 road projects in Ukraine for over €1 billion investment. Well, Ukrainian roads are noteworthy for the large upgrade and rehabilitation needs that they have, and we are very pleased to see the push now to renew this infrastructure by the Ministry of Infrastructure, by Ukraavtodor, the state road agency, and we are trying to help with that. And one of the key developments here is our new project that we signed last year, which will help improve the connectivity with the seaports. This is the Kiev-Odessa highway. And then UZ electrification, Ukraine railways, as I mentioned earlier, is a key project improving the connectivity to the seaports. Of course, there is a lot to do, and we plan to focus on those priorities in the next few years. It both has to deal with investments in the actual port infrastructure, but also investments in the hinterland connections. And in this context, it is especially important to work in tandem with all the stakeholders, the cities where the ports are located, because as many of you know, Odessa, one of the oldest and largest ports in Ukraine, is located in the middle of a large city, and it is, I mean, Odessa port is still key to the country's connectivity, especially for container traffic. You know, with other stakeholders, Ukraine Railways, Road Agency, and others. Privatization and concession remain very high on the agenda, because clearly the state needs to focus on strategic infrastructure, but to the extent possible, transfer all the stevedoring assets to private investors. We also see a lot of new projects in the country dealing with the development of terminal capacity, upgrading the facilities, building intermodal terminals. So there is a clear need for that. There are many ideas, many initiatives, so we hope to help in their implementation. And then, of course, when this infrastructure is upgraded and is available, we hope that the improved connectivity will also help attract the transit traffic, so that declining trend will be reversed, and we will witness an increasing trend going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrei. Unfortunately, we only have about 10 minutes left for questions. So For our participants, please send us if you have any pending questions. We already have a bunch of them sent in, and I will turn to our panelists for a couple of questions each, but please keep your remarks briefly to 2 minutes so we can wrap up in time. And I'd like to start with Mamuka. Lots of the questions from our panelists, from our participants, sorry, have come specifically to you. And there's one thing that I'd like to add. So a twofold question. On one side, Nagorno-Karabakh, the second war, and the secondary projects that are developing there in terms of a transit corridor for energy specifically, but not only from the Caspian to the Black Sea, but potentially away from Georgia as a key transit country. What implications has that, or can that have on Black Sea interconnectivity? And then the second kind of set of questions is if you can very briefly ponder on in your analysis and the report and going forward in your research, how do you see the relation between Russia and Turkey, specifically in this context, and then of course also Turkey, the United States, as we're talking a lot about the increased potential for US investments in that region. Mamuka, the floor is yours.
I'll start with the second question because it's more difficult and it's easier to answer. I would say that I think it's a very complicated issue, but one thing I can tell is that unless US-Turkish relationships are improved and evolved and taken into where they're supposed to be in terms of strategic partnership, it will be very difficult for this region to move forward with all the projects that we are discussing here, and in general for maintaining stability and security in this area. I think this partnership is very essential. Russia-Turkey partnership will have its own path, but there are many different aspects. They are military and so forth, and solution of these issues, and whether this probably question is related to some of the military aspects and equipment and so forth as well. I think it lies in the improving relationship between United States and Turkey. So I'll end on that. On the issue of Karabakh, how it's impacted, we all know that the settlement agreement has a clause that refers to opening all the railway lines and construction, some of the new ones. Actually, it was my map. I wanted to keep it, but that's all right. So I just wanted to show here on the map that there is this old kind of railway connecting line that goes from Baku to via Armenia to Nakhchivan, and there's a conversation about rehabilitating this and how it will take some of the cargoes coming from Central Asia to maybe Turkey through this line, and there are many other kind of questions whether Georgia will maintain its position as a key transit country. I think that, first of all, I think it's essential for Azerbaijan to have access to Nakhchivan for its own domestic needs and for the development of this connection between Nakhchivan and mainland Azerbaijan. It's essential that if this railway system develops, that Armenia is integrated at some of the processes that are developing in South Caucasus, and Armenia feels that it's a part of the process of economic development and benefits from this process as well. But I think it will be very hard to think about diminishing of Georgia's role, particularly in the next 5 to 10 years, unless all the pipelines are moved to the different direction and unless all the infrastructure developments takes this new kind of shift towards south, which I doubt that will take place, frankly. And I think key is right now for everyone to focus on what are the bottlenecks that Ivo was mentioning in the system, that are how to attract more cargoes coming from Central Asia and beyond from different markets from Asia through these corridors coming from Baku to Black Sea ports of Georgia and beyond, in order to keep supplying ports that are developing in Ukraine, ports that are developing in Bulgaria and Romania. I mean, existing ports and some of the expansions that are taking place. And I think there are some positive developments in that regard, but this needs to be seen as a one big sort of system. You cannot develop one piece of infrastructure or another piece of infrastructure without seeing the entire picture. One important example is that Baku port, which is the excellent, as I was saying, that the state-of-the-art new facility, which is growing in its cargo shipments. So had about 5 million tons of shipments last year, increased 20%, has a capacity of 15 million tons overall. And so there is a huge sort of potential for increased cargoes with existing infrastructure already to supply this Baku port and then ship these cargoes to Black Sea. And existing ports in Georgia can service those cargoes. There is a new development in Poti with 3 million additional tons of cargoes with the Pace terminal, with, by the way, funded by DFC Development Finance Corporation, $50 million project. And I'm sure there will be, Ivo mentioned Anaklia. Anaklia will be developed if this entire initiative of larger picture that Ivo was mentioning, so larger volume cargoes coming from China or Indian subcontinent or Central Asia will be moving to Black Sea. That's when Anaklia will be absolutely irreplaceable and necessary, because deep sea ports are missing on the eastern side of Black Sea, while they exist on the western side of Black Sea. But there are also limitations that Bosphorus has. We should also remember that there is only 10,000 TEU container capacity, that ships that can pass through Istanbul. So this development needs to be seen in a complex sort of picture. There should be some cargoes coming from Central Asia that will be destined for Europe, going to Constanza or Bulgarian or Ukrainian ports. But they need to be obviously transit through different parts of the world that requires these larger ships and larger ports to accept them. So I know there's lots of details here, but we don't have time for that.
Thank you, Ramuka. And then very briefly turning to Ivo also with two very short questions. One is regarding transport, especially of energy, and as we're looking at interconnections in terms of pipelines, there's also a new form of interconnections through LNG, and the Black Sea is not connected to that, but there's a lot of discussion in connecting, for instance, Bulgaria and Romania to Alexandroupolis and connecting hence Eastern Mediterranean LNG to the Black Sea with its richness there. If you can address that very quickly. And then there's another question, if you feel like you want to ponder very briefly on that, on fiber optic cable interconnectivity that connects the South Caucasus with the Black Sea.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Very briefly, there is right now one fiber optic cable under the Black Sea that connects Georgia and Bulgaria, but definitely needs more investment and improvement, because the future is in data storage, big data, and data storage will grow exponentially, and data transfers are the new trade flows. If our Western allies and the United States don't assist us in that and help us, the Chinese would definitely push for it. And we are all seeing right now the rivalry between the technological value propositions of China and the Western world. And the Black Sea, happen to be right in the middle of it, but our need of support and investment is overlooked. very often. Yes, that needs additional improvement. Right now, the cable connects Burgas and Poti, the fiber optic cable. The energy relation between Bulgaria and Romania, I'm glad you asked. The former Trans-Balkan pipeline that used to be the main route for Russian Gazprom supplies to Eastern Europe, the Black Sea, Western Front and Turkey is now left unused, which is a fantastic opportunity to reverse flow, which Bulgaria and Romania have done already, and to actually bring LNG shipments from all over the world, including the United States, through the very soon to be developed FSRU LNG import terminal in Alexandroupolis, the interconnection between Bulgaria and Greece, and then it's a free capacity of the former Trans-Balkan pipeline to Romania, and to the Ukraine. Romania is, we all envy nobly Romania of being very independent, energy independent from the gas raw material point of view, but is an important transit country to future LNG supply from Greece and Bulgaria to the biggest consumer of gas in the region, which is the Ukraine. And now Ukraine can be supplied and is supplied from Świnoujście, Poland, but the Black Sea, the Alexandroupolis northern Mediterranean route is actually closer. And there is something else. The EastMed would only make sense to terminus in Piraeus from Cyprus if that feasibility actually is there. But even now, the Shell and Noble Energy are technology ready to supply LNG from the Shell terminals in Egypt to Revitusa in Piraeus and through the Bulgarian and Romanian networks all the way to the Ukraine. Israeli gas can reach the Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Romania tomorrow. So that is very strategically important, and we welcome and encourage it as official policy. Bulgaria does, and so does, I think, Romania.
Yeah, it's a fantastic alignment that we should explore furthermore, and maybe for another discussion. There is a lot of talk into how to diversify energy specifically in the Black Sea region through building interconnectors that are in a building state, but should be more developed, especially on that side, also towards Ukraine. And that brings me very we're already running over time, to Andrei, maybe for last words, if you want to address the issue of that was asked to all the panelists today on interconnectivity in terms of fiber cable optic. But another question for me, very briefly, from your presentation, what was striking was 160 tons per year to 10. And you focused your presentation a lot on the building with the EBRD and other organizations support the building and development of ports away from the Azov Sea because of the choke point there, especially since 2018. Though Mariupol has traditionally been such a reliance on exports for countries internal and and external to the Black Sea. So if you want to just briefly address your views on critical infrastructure moving and transport, particularly having to move in Ukraine with the support of EBRD and others away from the Azov Sea and into the limited maritime space that remains after annexation in the Black Sea.
Yes, thank you, Julia. I will start with your second question. So here it's important to highlight that the trend of the traffic flows moving is an objective trend, and it's not only about certain shipments diverting from Mariupol to, let's say, Yuzhny, but it's also the change in the structure of traffic. So you can see an increase in grains and a certain decline in metals, which results from the consequences of the armed conflict. So of course, we used to have many steel mills in the Donbas area, in Donetsk and Lugansk regions, though that territory is currently not under Ukrainian control. So clearly, the overall steel production in Ukraine has declined compared to what it was before 2013. On the other hand, you have the iron ore production growing, so that these flows are being reallocated for objective reasons. For iron ore, you tend to use very large ships, Capesize and Capesize Plus, and those can be serviced only in Yuzhny, in the port of Yuzhny, which is the deepest port in Ukraine. Mariupol, with its 9 meters of depth, is of course less advantaged for those types of cargo. So it's I would say more a result of the change in the structure of trade flows rather than them shifting from one location to the other. But this is objective, and we in EBRD we don't prioritize projects based on political considerations. In fact, we do support projects in Mariupol. We work with the city of Mariupol. We finance public transport projects there. At the moment, we do not have any projects in the port of Mariupol, which I mean can be explained by many reasons. You can see that our port projects are mainly focused in the private sector. So it's all the result of having interest from investors, having an actual project to be developed and to be financed, and working with us to prepare this project and then have it approved in the bank. But of course, we are happy to look at various ports and at various projects, including Mariupol. So if they come up, we will be happy to consider them.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, Ivo, and thank you, Dr. Tsereteli, Mamuka, for your fantastic presentations. Unfortunately, we'll have to wrap up, but there's a lot more things to discuss. My takeaway from this, and perhaps many others, especially as I'm looking from a security perspective, it looks like peace through development, at least in the extended Black Sea, is the key to achieving both prosperity, development, and also security, two things that we're struggling but further developing. And I think from all of your fantastic presentations today, and visualizing that, we were able to see the significant progress as well as the significant potential for development in countries that are perceived as the smaller countries with less capacity, both in terms of energy, in terms of critical infrastructure. But when we look at Georgia as a transit corridor, at Ukraine with its major industry capacity, and Bulgaria and Romania on the western side, we see that there's a lot of progress done over the last few years, despite security and development challenges, including in the area of COVID and post-COVID recovery. So thank you all again for your presentations. I hope we'll have an opportunity to expand these discussions in the future. Thank you also for all our participants and for your questions and taking an interest in this panel. I wish you all a nice rest of the day, whether you're in the morning or in the evening over in Europe. And thank you all again. Goodbye.
Thank you.